Hi guys, today I want to talk about a question that I think is becoming more and more important. Is K-pop still thriving, or is it starting to face some deeper problems behind its global success? When people think about K-pop today, they usually think of huge fan bases, global tours, strong album sales, and massive online influences. So on the surface, K-pop still looks very successful, and that is true. It's still one of South Korea's most influential cultural exports. But when I looked at recent reports, I found that global popularity does not always mean the industry is stable on the inside. My main point today is that K-pop is still powerful, but it's also facing serious issues involving company control, artist treatment, and long-term sustainability. First, I want to talk about the differences between success and stability. K-pop companies are still making a lot of money. My paper mentions that the four biggest Korean entertainment companies made about $1.3 billion in album sales and streaming revenue in 2023. But at the same time, their market value dropped a lot compared with their earlier peak. To me, that contrast is really important. It's just that even if the industry is still making profit, people are starting to question whether the system is actually strong in the long run. So the issue is not whether K-pop is still successful. The issue is whether that successful is built on a model that can really last. A very clear example of this tension is the conflict between Nugent's idol and Hype. This case got a lot of attention because it showed that K-pop is not just about music and performance, it's also about contracts, management, and control. Hype accused Min Hye-jin of trying to gain independent control over Idol and its artists, and she pushed back by saying Hype had taken her ideas. Later, the dispute became even more serious when a court supported Idol's request to stop Nugent from doing independent commercial activities without urgency permissions. Even if this one case does not represent the whole industry, it still reveals something important. Behind the polished image of K-pop, there can be power struggles and legal conflicts that fans do not always see. Another issue is artist treatment. One moment that really stood out was when Hani from Nugent spoke at the parliamentary hearing and described what she saw as workplace bullying. I think this matters because concerns about pressure, unfair treatment, and harsh conditions have existed in K-pop for a long time, but artists do not often speak about them so publicly in an official setting. This is why this was such a significant moment. It showed that these issues are no longer just fan discussions online. They are becoming part of a large public conversation, and once that happens, it becomes much harder for the industry to ignore them. Besides company conflict and artist treatment, there is also the question of how K-pop makes money. A lot of the industry still depends heavily on physical album sales, but today many fans buy album not meaning because they need the CD, but because the album is also a collectible item. It might include photo cards, multiple versions, special packaging, and fun benefits. This has clearly been profitable, but it also creates a weakness if companies rely too much on a small group of very dedicated fans spending over and over again. Then the system may look stronger than it really is. In other words, K-pop may still be making money, but the business model may be narrower and more fragile than it appears. This concern becomes even stronger when we look at more recent changes. My research points out that physical album sales fell in 2024, which was the first decline in about 10 years. At the same time, big companies have been focusing more on global touring and on getting more spending from core fandoms, while smaller companies have had a harder time surviving. To me, this suggests that K-pop may be getting better at making money from loyal fans, but not necessarily better at creating the kind of broad excitement that once made it feel new and unpredictable. And that leads to a creative question as well as an economic one. If the system becomes too controlled, too repetitive, and too profit driven, then it may lose some of the energy that helped make K-pop so exciting in the first place. Another point I found really interesting is that K-pop is now becoming easier to copy outside of Korea. My paper talks about K-pop demon hunters as an example of this. It shows that Korean-inspired pop culture can now be produced outside the traditional Korean entertainment industry. On one hand, this shows how influential K-pop has become. It's not longer just a local or national industry. It has become a global style and a cultural language that other people can use. But on the other hand, this also creates a challenge. If K-pop can be reproduced without Korean companies, then those companies may have to work even harder to prove what makes their own system unique. So global influences can actually create new pressure at the same time. So overall, I do not think the best answer is that K-pop is simply thriving, and I also do not think the best answer is that it's collapsing. The reality is more complicated than that. K-pop still have huge global visibility, strong fandoms, and major cultural power, but at the same time, there are clear warning signs: conflicts over management and control, public concerns about artist treatment, dependence on highly mentioned fandoms, declining physical sales, and increasing competition from Korea-inspired media made outside Korea. All of those things suggest that K-pop is at a turning point. So I want to end with this question: can K-pop keep growing under the same system it is now, or does it need a model that is more creative, more flexible, and more sustainable? I think the answer to the question will shape the future of K-pop. Thank you, guys.